Thank you for joining us. I'm Michael Miller, and this is Live with Miami's Community News. We have a special guest today, a very young person here. Her name is Andrea Pita with the School for Advanced Studies, the West Campus, and it's really referenced SAS. Is that how you refer to that?
Yeah, that's correct.
And we have some people in their studio audience. Welcome to everybody that's here. So you're really an exceptional person, all right?
Oh, thank you.
And I've read some of the work that you've done. It's been extraordinary. How old are you?
I'm 16.
16. Oh my goodness. All right. So tell us about some of the things you've been doing and also some of the things your classmates have been doing and how you've been helping people.
Well, in July, ending my sophomore year, I decided that I wanted to start a service project that was dedicated to raising awareness to childhood anxiety and anxiety-related disorders. So OCD, depression, it kind of falls upon the whole mental health disorders, because anxiety really plays into everything. So we launched it by starting a drive for the Nicholas Children's Psychiatry and Psychology Wards. That first drive, we collected about 155 baskets worth of goods, which were the equivalent to about $8,000. And this past weekend, actually on Saturday, we almost times six that, I guess. We collected 622 baskets and over $30,000.
So, Andrea, tell us what's in those baskets.
We did 3 types of baskets this past weekend. We did wellness, we did entertainment. What does wellness constitute? It's everything that has to do with what little girls like to do, paint their nails, so nail polish, face masks, anything that they request, because it's a list that they specifically send me to get stuff for them, right? And then the entertainment basket had things like Uno cards. You had the school supplies baskets, now that we're going back to school, notebooks, things like that.
But how would you get that? What was that process?
Well, social media. Social media, I think, has been my best tool throughout all of this. I post things on social media. I send them to my best friends. I make a post with all the information regarding the drive. I say, well, this is basket number 1, school supplies. These are the items you should bring. This is how you should bring it. You can bring it in a reusable bag, a basket, an actual basket, or a box. And we're going to be here at Miami Park at this time, and people just come out, and I'll give you service hours if you come and donate.
So you put this announcement out. You tell people what you want, all right? And then they show up.
And then they show
up.
So
what is that like when you always say, look, there's somebody in the parking lot, they're bringing you this stuff. What is that like?
Well, when we got there, first off, there was already cars there. It was even before the times that we were supposed to be there. We were supposed to be there at 9. It started at 9. I got there about 10 minutes before, and there was already a huge line at Miami, and I felt immediately overwhelmed. I started grabbing all my things. I told my mom, I need to get out of the car now because these people are all waiting. And for the next 2 hours, we were there from 9 to 11. It was just go time all the time. No time to think whatsoever. Just grab, go, take information, grab baskets in the car, and just do it.
And what, more or less, what percentage of the people came with it where it was complete? You didn't have to do anything except for bring it to the hospital.
All of them. 100% of them.
No kidding. That is extraordinary. All right.
Yeah.
We're going to get to how long you've been doing that. But a lot of people, when they're involved in different types of charity work and reaching out, they've had some personal experience why they want to be involved in that particular thing. Tell us about your motivation.
My motivation for this project, I think, is very personal. He's sitting in the studio right now. My younger brother, when he was 8 years old, got diagnosed with high-functioning anxiety. And ever since then, it's an adjustment. We have to figure out how to adjust to make sure that we're patient. I think that that's the one quality that I learned the most throughout these past almost 4 years already. Patience, make sure that understanding, to know that while I may be okay with some things, he's not, because it causes him anxiety. And then most recently, OCD.
So lots of us are familiar with the word anxiety. And everybody has their own interpretation, and then people get nervous and then they get anxious. But the type of anxiety that some people suffer is sometimes debilitating.
Yes.
So tell us about that.
Well, anxiety is on a spectrum. Just like any other mental health disorder, it could either be really low functioning, where you get nervous, like you said, sometimes your hands might get a little sweaty. You might have tics, nervous tics, where sometimes you move your hands or you jerk your shoulders a certain way. That's how we started noticing things with my younger brother. And then it might be on the higher end of the spectrum, where you cannot physically talk to anybody because you think that they won't like you, or that you're gonna have some sort of bad reaction or say the wrong thing. And it's a process of just overthinking things constantly. Your mind is on overdrive, overdrive, overdrive all the time. So that's when it gets to be a little bit debilitating. And that's what leads you, some kids, to stay at Nicholas and be in those psychiatry and psychology wards that were helping. And now, because of the pandemic, they can't see their parents. They see them maybe 2 hours. The visiting hours are from 5 to 7 daily, but 2 hours isn't really a lot of time to spend with your parents.
If I was at Nicholas a couple of years ago visiting the parents of a child that was there, and when you walk through the hallways, you realize that people that are working there are doing some really phenomenal and special work, all right? And that they're taking care of these young people that really need that have, hopefully 50 to 80 years in front of them, all right? So, and during this pandemic, we know that social, emotional, mental illness is skyrocketing, all right? I mean, it's completely out of sight, and we frequently do interviews and shows with mental health specialists. And the stories that we get is the whole range of people of being locked in their homes on purpose, of not eating or overeating. We know why it's called COVID-19, all right? So, and people not able to function much anymore because they've been at home and trying to do work at home. When they go out, they get scared. And I think for the first time in our history of the world, this is one of those times that everybody, for the most part, has experienced very similar things, somewhere in our spectrum here, that we all have that whole range of things. So, so we know that you've been a pretty bright student, right?
Yes.
How did that happen? First grade, all right? You're in first kindergarten. Was she in nursery school, Mom? Did she go to nursery school? Was she brilliant then? All right. So, and you're in 11th grade?
Yeah, I'm a junior this year.
Starting, just starting.
Yeah, I just started my junior year.
So here you are, first grade. Did you know that you were bright?
I knew I was very demanding. I wanted things to get done. I wanted to, if there was a kid that fell on the playground and someone pushed him, I'd go up to the kid that pushed him and was like, hey, why'd you push him? He didn't do anything to you. So I was very demanding and I was very protective. In general, as I got older, I became an older sister. In second grade, actually, I became an older sister. And those instincts just started to grow. So then when my younger brother got diagnosed with anxiety, it was like that protection skyrocketed. And I knew that there were other kids out there that didn't have that protection maybe, or that didn't have that same awareness that there was not just the people in your family rooting for you, but I'm rooting for you. There are other people like me rooting for you, mental health specialists, that we want you to get better. Anxiety can sometimes be crippling, but it doesn't have to be that way if you will it to not be that way. It's a mental health disorder. So if you try really hard, if you go to therapy, there's a lot of things you can do to get better. It's not going to go away, but it can get better.
So in many cases, it is somewhat controllable, and to deal with it. We know, when you go on stage for the first time, you get the jitters, right?
Yeah.
And you go, well, this is exciting, all right? I used to be a fearful flyer. I had to take classes all the time, all right, to get over that, all right? And it was like, wow, that was because I said, I need to do that, right? And then I remember going someplace and somebody says, what was it? What'd you do to fly? I said, I went to the cockpit and I put my hands out the window like this. So, and understanding the process of anxiety and how it takes you from being calm to being you feel like you're out of control.
Yeah.
So some people that are not afflicted with some of the nervousness, all right? How would you best explain to somebody an anxiety attack?
Oh, well, I've had one, so I can speak from personal experience. The time that it happened to me was about maybe 2 years ago. I think as a high achieving student, it's hard to sometimes accept when you've done bad on a test. So I walked out of the classroom and immediately just started breathing heavily, and everything was going black. And my friends were grabbing me. They were like, are you okay? And it's like your world just stops. And the only thing you can think about is how you did on that exam. and you're walking out of that room and you can't breathe, and they're telling you sit down, but you can't will your legs to move because the only thing you're focusing on is, I did bad on that test, how am I going to raise my grade? And that's what I was talking about, the constant overdrive of your thoughts just going into like 10 times speed. You're going on a highway, and instead of going the 40 miles per hour, the speed limit, you're going 140, and you can't stop. And so when you will yourself and you hear that voice, something that pulls you out, you have to think of something happy, your happy place. That's what people refer to. And my happy place is always my family. So I start to think, I'm like, I calm down, or maybe my little brother, he's my best friend. So I kind of have to remind myself to breathe just a little.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when you start pressing on the brake and you're slowing down and you go into cruise mode for a little, and then you go back to having full control of yourself.
And the professor knows this well, which is our strengths out of control can become our weaknesses. So when you're a high driver and you're pushing and pushing and you're pushing, the thing that pushes you is also the thing that pushes you over. Now, we learned lots of exercises to be able to get rid of that adrenaline that was there, all right? And I still do it when I fly, all right? We know that it's 45 seconds from the time the plane is lined up until it's there. And I hear him, Slim Cummings, man, great guy. He'd say, okay, wiggle your toes, right? And I would be sitting in those planes going like this to try to get rid of it so we can focus on here and now. And I know that's part of it. Everybody finds their own place. And if you find a happy place, it's wonderful. So how do you balance between being a extra achiever, a high achiever, and the other things in your life that don't require that type of mindset?
It's been very, very hard. I will say that because like I have progressively over the years just put more and more dedication and more work towards everything I do. My mentality has been very set. Instead of being a growth mindset, it's been a very closed mindset, which is something I identified around last year during the pandemic at the beginning, when suddenly there was, how do I balance taking 4 AP classes online and go to sports and be a present older sister and do all of the things that I want to do in the best way possible, because that is who I am. I like to be the best that I can be in everything that I do. Not necessarily the number one player, but the number one supporter of myself and of my teammates or of my peers. So it's a matter, I think, of just compartmentalizing. I put myself in certain modes. So when I'm at school, I'm in school mode. Okay, I get to school and I do my work at school. And as soon as I leave school, I allow myself a break, an hour. Okay, I get home. I ask my brother, how was his day? I talk to him. I have lunch with my family. Then it's back to school mode, homework for a few hours. Then again, switch. If I'm working with my nonprofit, if I'm doing the anxiety kids, okay, sit down, do my work for that. If I'm working on my mindfulness club at school, then I shift to that. Okay, let's do that. And then at the end, I switch it off again, and it's back to being the older sister, the daughter. I call my older brother who's up at UF. He might answer, he might not, but it's a matter of just being able to turn that switch on and off, which I didn't really have control over, I think, until about maybe a few months ago. But it's definitely been the best thing that's allowed me to be who I want to be in everything that I want to do.
So, Andrea, one of the things that we recognize is that if we put certain ideas and thoughts and actions into certain time frames, there was an issue that was bothering us, and so we were talking about it all the time. I said, why don't we just talk about it every day from 4 to 5 o'clock? That's when we're going to talk about it. So half of it went away immediately because we went around 4 or 5 o'clock. Then it was okay. Let's just do it 2 days a week at 4 to 5. I got an idea. A month later, let's do it every Friday at 5:30. Exactly. And that's what happened. We allowed to recognize it internally that it was an issue. We allowed some time for it, and then it became a non-issue. You mentioned about things that you want to do. So tell us about where you'd like to be in 5 years.
Oh, 5 years from now.
All right, Mom, listen up. Brother, listen up. Here we go.
5 years from now. Well, this isn't something that I see myself doing short term as something just for high school or to get into college. A lot of kids do that. They do service projects for that. And I'm like, why? This is a cause. This is something you want to do. So 5 years from now, I still want to be running this. I see myself at a bigger nonprofit, maybe working at an international level. I look forward to working with mental health and psychologists and psychiatrists at a much larger scale than what I do now, so that it's very difficult in this medium to work directly with patients that have anxiety, because I'm not a qualified person. I'm a 16-year-old high school junior. So it's something that I would want to do in the future. I would want to try to partner maybe with other people that would allow me to do that. 5 years from now, I'd hopefully have my bachelor's, and I'd be going bachelor's of psychology and be going into law school, because eventually I want to work in some sort of way that I can associate psychology and law school together. So something that's been very appealing to me is the World Health Organization, because they have lawyers that also work in some sort of public policy or something that has to do with mental health. And I want to be advocating for it at a law decision making level, because if you institute it as a bill, as a law, then it'll impact so many kids.
Did your mom know this?
She knows somewhat of it. She kind of just goes along with the plan. But
where do you want to go to school?
My dream school is Yale. I think that I've always been very, well, first off, I wanted to go to school out of the country, because I remember 2 years ago we went to London, and I fell in love with London and England in general, because I'm a huge English literature fan and I love classics. So Jane Eyre, Pride and Prejudice, all of them. I'll read them. At home, I have a huge library. So when I went to London, I fell in love, and I visited Oxford, and that was such a wonderful experience for me. But realistically speaking, I can't afford to go to Oxford. So my next best thing, I think, was Yale. And then I started doing some research. I started looking up, okay, what can I do at Yale? What degrees do they offer? Do they even have something that I want to do? Because Ivy Leagues typically have very different variations of majors. And I'm not a very small city type of girl. I grew up in Miami, so I'm a very big city, but something about Yale kind of reeled me in. So then ever since then, I've been looking forward to kind of trying to get there, trying to do something to be able to get there grades-wise, academically. But a lot of people have told me, oh, the service project will help you get into that school you want to go to. And I'm like, that's not the mission. That's not why I want to do it. So hopefully Yale. And for law school, Yale.
So, and you mentioned about, well, it's too much money, or I don't have that money. I'm going to tell you a short story about a gentleman, and we were on a committee to help the city. This is already 10 years ago. Put together some plans for a community center, which included a gym. There were about 6 of us. Somebody said, well, where are we going to get the money for that? The guy said, that's not the concern. Concern is put together a plan so we can present the plan to somebody. Federal money paid for the whole thing, all right? So the thought that money can control you, each of us, that's not it. It's the desire to get there, all right? And that all that other stuff is going to find its way, all right? So when that stuff comes up again, put that in the compartment over here, all right? And just let that be. And you were so passionate about what you're doing. And when you talk about working with the World Health Organization, that's really on a very high level of empathy and about understanding, about wanting to make some real changes in the world. If you could go like this and make a really significant change in the world today, what would that be?
Oh, wow, that's a loaded question. I think that if I could snap my fingers, I would probably either get rid of the foster care system and institute a plan that's much, much better for children that are in the social care system, because I think that that's also a very prominent issue in the United States, how social workers sometimes just place kids into foster homes that are not in their necessarily best benefit. I would either do that, or I would pass a law that would make sure that every kid in the United States had to learn about mindfulness in their schools, and that mental health would be the priority, not a letter grade, not a percentage, because that doesn't define you as a student. I could be a very high achieving student statistically, but I'm just a number. My GPA is a 4.0, right? So then I'm that number. And when you're born, you're assigned a social security number. So you become a number to the government. And that's not who you are. You are a person. And if mental health was actually a prominent issue to lawmakers, policymakers, people in Washington, D.C., they would have done something already in order to enact certain laws that would help kids be educated about it and destigmatize it, because having a mental health disorder doesn't define you either. So there's a lot of things about society that I don't quite feel fit the norm and should be changed. But unfortunately, I can't snap my
So you
fingers.
mentioned 3 or 4 different things. Are you going to write a paper on each one of those on how that could happen and why it could happen? Would you like to do that?
Maybe. I think last year I took AP capstone seminar. I did a paper on gender inequality and the pay gap between women and men in sports. And that's what my presentation was about. And I found that that's also something I was very passionate about.
You know, when you get your PhD, you have to make you have to have a thesis in order to be able to do that and present it and defend it.
Yeah.
And I think that's part is listening to you and seeing you express some of those things, right? And we know the next step in that process is for you to externalize it, not just in words and in verbalizing, but to hone it to create a paper on it. Because when you're over the age of 50 and you see all these changes that have happened in the world that happened 20 years ago, and today it's like normal, you'd go, well, of course, right? Think about it. Less than 20 years, most of the manufacturers of automobiles are not going to be producing gas engines anymore.
Yeah, they're not.
Who would ever have thought that would happen? All right? Right. Think back 50 years. All right.
Like a Tesla's a thing now.
Right. And 1969 went to the moon. By the way, I don't know what the big deal is about these guys going up for a minute and a half and coming back down. All right. I haven't figured that part out. 1969, somebody walked on the moon. It's like, wow, how cool is that? So all that is waiting for you, and somebody's waiting to listen to you. And all you have to do is bring it out and be able to defend that. There's a young lady who is from the south end of the county. She went to the city of South Miami a couple of years ago. She says, I want you to enact an ordinance. So every new home in South Miami has to have a solar power on them. All right. And also, if the homes are destroyed, a hurricane or fire, when it's destroyed a certain bit, the replacement has to be that. Well, now there's cities across the country, right, that have done that. And you ready for this? When the pre-pandemic, she was downtown, big speeches, save the world. So she just got into law school at the University of Miami, full scholarship and a PhD program, and they are paying her and scholarship.
Wow.
Because she 5 years before, and I'm sure it's many years before that, proud dad, by the way, congratulations, Bob. And so she was out there expressing the change that she wanted to see. And now I have a friend who put up 109 solar panels at his house. That's how big his house is, all right?
Oh my God.
And he's 80, all right? He wanted to do that because it was a bigger picture thing, all right, to make some changes. I'm sure you saw some photographs of Biscayne Bay last March, April, May, where it's completely clear, all right? Compare that to a few months before, where the waterways, it's like a road, except for it's out of water, was all clogged up.
Yeah.
So the world is waiting for people like you to make these changes, because when you look back to what you've done in 5 years from now, you say, well, of course. And if you're through the civil rights movement and the women's movement and the Me Too and all that stuff, well, it's normalized now. So there may be something that you might think that is really far out. It really isn't. It's just a few years away. There's a young lady out there, probably a few years younger than you, that is wondering about herself and what can she do to make a difference. And I'd like you to talk directly to her, all right? All right? And I want you to talk about her future, and you're going to look right into this camera over here. You're talking right at her.
Well, first off, I would like to tell you that the biggest challenge that you're going to ever face is yourself. That is probably the biggest thing you're going to have to discern, whether or not you are going to be the limit to everything that you do. Because once you realize that you are capable of so much more and so many bigger things, you're going to change the world. You're going to start taking actions and you're going to start talking to people. You get on your phone and you have no fear. You dial a number and you start talking. That's all you have to do. What's the worst that that can happen? They say no, move on to the next person. There are so many billions of people in the world that you can talk to. So many important people. There's so many presidents. The president of the United States isn't the only one. So take your time, be patient. It's not going to happen immediately. You're going to go places. Sometimes they might not feel like they're the best fit. Change the place. That's all it takes. I've changed schools 3 times and I finally found one that makes me feel that I am the best version of myself. So when you find that place, make it your home. And surround yourself with people that you know are going to support you, that are going to be there along the way, your parents, your family. And if you don't have them, make your own family with your friends, with people that you know are always going to be there for you. And then start writing stuff down on a Google document, on a piece of paper, on a sticky note that you found in the hallway. Write it down, make a plan, and then just do it. That's all it takes. Just you getting over yourself and being able to do it. That's as simple as it
Wow.
is.
You heard it from the mouth of babe. So people can follow you on Instagram at the Anxiety Kids, right?
Yes, our @ is the Anxiety Kids.
That is tremendous. And tell us about your school.
Well, my school now is the School for Advanced Studies. I'm at the West Campus. In a matter of 2 days, I've met people that I know that are going to be in my life for the rest of it, that support me. 2 of them texted me before getting here, told me, let me know how everything goes, good luck. And I know that my teachers, I absolutely adore them, from my math teacher, my calculus teacher, who I know is going to be probably the toughest teacher I'm going to have. It doesn't matter, because I know she's going to give me one of the best educations I'm going to have in math. And then my counselor, Miss Ochoa, is the best. And Miss Bray and all the support staff in general, like, it really feels like you're at home. And it's kind of weird because you're in this gray space where you're a college student, but you're also a high school student. And it's very nice because, one, they prioritize mental health for us. They always make sure that, yes, we are a group of very high achieving students, but are you happy with what you're doing? Are you doing well? And we can talk to each other so openly about that, which is something that I love about my school. And I have Mr. Lindsay, who has been my #1 supporter since the very day that I reached out to him. He has always been there for me. And Dr. M and everybody in general at SAS has always been so welcoming, so supportive. And I really could not have asked to land in a better place than just that.
Wow, I'm very impressed. Mom must and brother must be very happy with you as well. And young men and women that are listening, if you're having anxiety problems, please speak to your parents, your counselors, a religious leader, somebody that you trust, an aunt or uncle, somebody, and tell them what you're experiencing so that you can deal with it. It doesn't have to be as bad as you are feeling, and there's hope, and you will get better. And so we're going to call it an afternoon here with Andrea Pita, a wonderful student, a wonderful person. Thank you, Professor, over there. And thanks, Mom. Great job. You're making everybody proud, Andrea. And we're going to wrap it up here. Tommy, thank you for producing the show. And we're going to look right at the camera, and we're going to say goodbye, and we're going to hold still for a moment. Bye, and thank you very much for your time.